In this video tutorial, I'm going to show you how to print targets so that you can have an ICC profile created. As you can see on my desktop, I've downloaded the 2-page 8.5 by 11 target. They're actually smaller than 8.5 by 11, and I'll talk about that. The other thing that you're going to need to do is go to the URL that you see at the bottom of the screen and download the Adobe Color Print Utility. You can also Google Adobe Color Print Utility and you'll find a link. If you double-click and open this application, it's going to open up a standard open file dialog and ask you to navigate to the folder where the targets reside. So as you can see, it's already gone to the A4 RGB targets. I'm going to open up the first target. And as you can see, you get a small preview of the image. You can make it larger if you want, but it's really not important because there's really nothing to see here. You have to use this utility because Photoshop CS5 and Photoshop CS6 no longer support printing using no color management. So Adobe has provided this utility instead, and it's much easier to actually use. So the first thing that you need to do, which is very important, is go into your page setup. Now, there are two particular problems that occur where people do not get their profiles created correctly due to target printing errors. And the first is here. They don't set up the page setup correctly, and the target itself either scales or gets cut off. You'll notice in the image here that I have a diagram or a set of arrows that show that once the target is printed, from this edge to this edge should be approximately 203 millimeters. So it's very important that the target print out and not scale larger or smaller than this value. And you never want to see these black triangles on either side get cut off. You want to see the triangles and hopefully the cut lines. So in order to do this, the first thing you need to do in your print setup is select the actual printer that you're going to use. Don't use any printer. Select, in this case, we'll select the Epson 3880 because this is now going to populate this area of paper sizes based on the particular printer. So it's very important that you pick the particular printer you're using. If I come up here and I select a Brother, you'll see that the paper options are completely different. So always select the printer that you're going to be using. So here we're going to select the 3880. And this is also extremely important, is picking the right page setup. So you'll notice that there are a number of options here. US letter manual, US letter, sheet feeder borderless, auto expand. You never want to use these auto expand settings. You basically want to pick, in this particular case, US letter for this 2-page target. And you'll also notice there's a flyout that shows you the page size, 8.5 by 11, and what the borders are. So we're going to pick US letter and OK. At this point, all we have to do is select print. And at this point, you're going to be seeing the actual print driver, in this case for the Epson 3880. So the most important thing that you can do is come down here and select your printer settings. Here is very critical that you select the settings that apply to the type of paper that you're using and your print settings. So for example, here let's say that we're going to use Ultra Premium Photo Paper Luster. These are called media settings. So if you're using a third-party paper that isn't made by Epson, in the box there should be a recommended media setting that you would use for that particular paper. This controls how the ink is laid out on the paper, so it's fairly critical. So in this case, let's presume that we are either using Ultra Premium Photo Paper or the manufacturer for the third-party paper recommends using Premium Luster Photo Paper. That's very important. You'll notice that a lot of the settings here are grayed out thanks to the ability of the Adobe Print Utility to control this part of the driver. So you really can't set anything incorrectly here. On the Mac, we have the ability to select 16-bit output. This will have no bearing for printing these targets. They're not in 16-bit, and even if they were, this is not going to make any kind of a significant difference. Well, it's not going to make any kind of a difference on the output in terms of printing these targets. So you can leave it on or off. You won't see this option under Windows anyway. At this point, you would pick whether you want to print at 1440 or 2880. I would suggest you pick, in this particular case, the best quality settings. You do not necessarily need to have a profile for different settings here. You can set 2880, and then if you decide that you want to print at 1440, the profile should work just fine. But in this particular case, let's go ahead and select 2880. High speed can be on. If you have a printer that allows you to do an auto head alignment, I would do that, and then you can use your high speed setting, certainly for Epson printers. So this is basically the only thing that you need to set. And what's very important is that you either keep track of these particular settings, make a screen capture, write them down, or perhaps what you might want to do is come in here and actually make a preset. You could say save current settings as preset, and we could call this Epson 3880 luster. That will then record all these particular settings in this preset. The reason this is important is once you get your ICC profile, you want to make sure that you set all of these settings exactly as you printed out the target, the exception being the output resolution. So if you were to print out your target this way, have a profile built, and then for whatever reason, by mistake, you selected a different media setting, the output is going to be different and you're going to get an inferior quality result from your profile. At this point, all you have to do is click on the print button and the target will print. I'm going to cancel that. I just want to again point out that it's absolutely critical that when the print comes out of your printer, that the target measures within a couple of millimeters. You could be off a millimeter or two, but 203 millimeters from side to side, and that nothing here gets cut off, that all of the diamonds are seen on the target. If something doesn't work out and it's cropped, we won't be able to read the target. If the image shifts from one side or the other to the paper without being cut off, if it's shifted slightly to the left or to the right, it's not centered on the paper, that's not a problem, because I'm going to trim these anyway before measuring. I just want to show you one other item here, and we go into print on the Macintosh. If you come down here into your color settings or color matching, the utility will automatically set everything correctly for you. You can't produce the wrong settings here. So at this point, all you have to do is click print, and you should be ready to go. Before you print the target, if your printer has a utility that allows you to make sure that all the ink nozzles are firing correctly and are clean, then I would run such a test, a nozzle check, which is something that is commonly done on Epson printers. The other thing I'll point out is that when you get the print out of your printer, don't expect it to appear to match what you see on screen in this utility. They have no bearing on each other. So other than making sure that everything is printing correctly, that your driver is set up correctly, and that you haven't cropped anything, you should be good to go. I would let the targets dry down for at least 24 hours. If you need to send them off right away, maybe put a sheet of butcher paper or plain paper in between them, because there will be a little bit of outgassing. By the time I receive them, they should be ready to measure. If you have any questions, send me an email or give me a call.